My life used to be a series of clocks. But the first thing that broke it wasn't a confession, wasn't a fight. It was my car telling me someone else's name. Alarm at 6:10. School drop-off at 7:25. My shift starting at 8 p.m. And somewhere between those times, without me noticing, my marriage learned a second rhythm. I'm Grant, 43. I work nights doing maintenance at a regional hospital. I fix doors that won't close, units that overheat, alarms that won't stop screaming. Nothing heroic, but I've learned something working nights. Machines always warn you before they fail. People usually don't. My wife Lila works days at a rehab clinic. Physical therapy. She helps people relearn how to walk after they've been broken. I used to think that meant she understood damage. I didn't realize it didn't stop her from causing some. We have one kid, a son named Micah, 10 years old. The kind of kid who listens more than he talks. The kind who notices when adults stop looking at each other. Our life wasn't dramatic. 2-bedroom apartment. Old sedan. Routine mornings. We weren't rich. We weren't struggling. We were steady. And steady feels like safe. Until something small goes missing. The day everything started didn't come with a warning. No slammed doors. No raised voices. No last words. It started with oatmeal, a missing shoe, and a charging cable that wasn't where it belonged. Micah was hopping on one foot in the hallway. "One shoe is gone," he announced like it was a national emergency. Lila was at the counter making coffee. She wore her clinic scrubs, hair pulled back, eyes half awake. I was standing there in my work hoodie, rubbing sleep out of my face. Night shift makes you feel like your brain is always slightly behind your body. Micah found the shoe under the couch. Victory. He shoved it on like he'd won a race. Lila smiled. "Don't forget your lunch," she said. Micah grabbed his bag. He kissed her cheek. He gave me a quick hug that felt like a drive-by. Then he ran ahead of us down the stairs. Lila and I followed. In the parking lot, the morning air had that cold bite that makes you inhale carefully. Lila opened the passenger door of our old sedan and froze. She leaned in. Then she said, "Did you change something in here?" I blinked. "No." "Why?" She pointed toward the center console. A charging cable was missing. Not a huge thing. One of those cheap cables that appear and disappear like socks. But she looked bothered. "I had it yesterday," she said. I shrugged. Maybe Micah took it. Micah yelled from the driver's seat, "I didn't take anything." Lila's mouth tightened. Then she forced it open into a normal expression. "Whatever," she said. "We're running late." We drove. Micah talked about a science project. Lila nodded at the right times. I watched traffic lights change from red to green like they were giving instructions. Everything seemed normal, but the cable bothered me more than it should have. Not because it mattered, because Lila noticed it in a way that felt specific. Like that cable had a place, and it was missing from the place it belonged. After drop-off, I went home and slept. Or tried to. Sleep during the day is never full sleep. It's a negotiation with noise. Neighbors walking above you. A garbage truck outside. A dog barking at nothing. I woke up around 3 in the afternoon. The apartment was quiet. I got up and did what I always did. I cleaned a little. I checked Micah's homework folder. I made a mental note to fix the loose hinge on the bathroom cabinet. Then I went to the car to grab my work bag. When I got in, the dashboard lit up, and the screen flashed a message I'd never seen before. Bluetooth device connected, Evan's iPhone. I sat there with my hand on the steering wheel. Evan. I didn't know an Evan. I scrolled. Our car's Bluetooth list had always been simple. My phone. Lila's phone. That was it. Now there was Evan's iPhone. Paired. Saved. I stared at the name like it might change into something else if I waited. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was from the hospital. Sometimes I move cars around in the maintenance lot. Sometimes I jump in other vehicles to shift them. But this was our car. Our old sedan with the coffee stain on the passenger seat and Micah's soccer stickers on the back window. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, but my stomach didn't listen. I went back upstairs and stood in the kitchen. I thought about asking Lila, just casually, "Hey, why is there an Evan in our car?" But I didn't, because there are questions that, once spoken, change the air in a room. And I didn't want to change the air. Not yet. That night at work, I moved through hallways that smelled like sanitizer and warm electronics. I fixed a door latch in pediatrics. I replaced a light in a stairwell that flickered like it had anxiety. I responded to a call in radiology and waited for a nurse to finish a scan so I could reset a panel. Normal. But my mind kept circling that name. Evan. I pictured a dozen harmless explanations. A coworker borrowed the car. A nurse used it to jump her battery. A neighbor paired by accident in the parking lot. Bluetooth can be weird. Technology does dumb things. People do dumb things too, but I wasn't ready to think that. Around 4:30 a.m., I sat in the break room with a vending machine coffee that tasted like regret. I texted Lila. Just a normal text. "Everything good? Love you." She replied 10 minutes later. "Love you. Busy day. See you later." No heart emoji. Not that she owed me emojis. But I noticed the absence the way you notice a missing tooth with your tongue. The next few days were almost fine. Lila laughed at Micah's jokes. She asked me if I could fix the bathroom hinge. She told me about a patient who insisted on doing squats while holding a purse like it was a barbell. Normal. But her phone stayed close. Always close. If she walked from the kitchen to the bathroom, the phone came with her. If she took out trash, phone in her pocket. If she sat on the couch, phone face down on her thigh. I told myself she was stressed. The rehab clinic was understaffed. People came in hurting. Lila absorbed their frustration like a sponge. It made sense that she'd want distraction. But then the new habit arrived. The decompression drive. She started coming home and saying, "I'm going to take a quick drive." 10 minutes, she claimed, just to clear her head. I didn't argue. I understand needing quiet. I work nights partly because the silence feels like control. But the drives got longer. 10 minutes became 25. 25 became 40. Sometimes she came back with her cheeks pink from cold air and her eyes bright like she'd just had a good conversation. "Traffic," she'd say. Or, "I needed to breathe." I'd nod. I'd accept it. Because the alternative was imagining something else. And imagining something else felt like stepping off a ledge. One afternoon I found the charging cable. It was tucked into Lila's tote bag, wrapped neatly like it had been placed there on purpose. I held it up when she came home. "Oh," she said quickly, "I grabbed it for work, forgot to bring it in." I watched her face. She didn't look guilty. She looked careful, like she was walking across ice. Micah interrupted us, asking if we could make pancakes for dinner. Lila smiled wide and said, "Pancakes sound perfect." And just like that, the moment dissolved. This is the part people don't understand. Betrayal isn't always a storm. Sometimes it's fog. Sometimes you can't tell where the danger is, so you keep driving like everything is normal. Then you look back and realize you've been lost for miles. The first real detail, the one I couldn't file away, came from something stupid. Coffee. We had a small routine. Lila liked her coffee black. No sugar. No foam. just black coffee that made her face pinch for half a second. I liked mine with cream. Micah drank cocoa like he was fueling a rocket. One Friday, I got home from work around 7:15 a.m. Micah was already up watching cartoons, hair sticking up like he'd been electrocuted. Lila was putting on her shoes. She grabbed her keys, then paused. "I'm going to stop for coffee," she said. I blinked. "We have coffee." She shrugged. "I want some." "No," I said. She left. Micah and I ate cereal. I packed his lunch. I signed a permission slip. A normal morning. Lila came back 10 minutes later with a paper cup, and I noticed the writing on the side. Vanilla latte. I stared at it. Not because it was illegal for her to get a latte, because she hated sweet coffee. I'd watched her spit out a caramel drink once and say, "Why would anyone do that to a bean?" Now she was holding a vanilla latte like it belonged to her. She saw me looking. Her eyes flicked down to the cup, then up at me. "I just felt like it," she said. Her tone was casual, but her grip tightened on the cup. I nodded. I let it go. But something inside me shifted just a little, like a picture hanging crooked. You could ignore it for a while, but once you see it every time you walk by. That evening, Micah had a school event. Not a big one. A family night where kids showed their projects and parents stood around pretending they understood how glue works. Lila said she'd meet me there after work. I took Micah early. He wanted to show me his poster before the room got crowded. We got there and found his table. Micah launched into explanations about planets and gravity with the confidence of a man twice his age. I listened and nodded. Then I checked my phone. No message from Lila. The event started. Parents walked in. Teachers smiled with tired eyes. Micah kept glancing toward the door. I told him, "She's coming. She's probably parking." 10 minutes later, still nothing. I texted her, "Where you at?" No reply. Micah's smile faded around the edges. He tried to keep talking, but his voice softened. He stopped making eye contact. That's the thing about kids. They feel absence like temperature. Lila arrived 20 minutes late. Not running. Not flustered. Just arriving. Hair neat. Cheeks slightly pink. She leaned in and kissed Micah's head. "Hey, baby, I'm sorry, busy at work." Micah nodded like he accepted it, but his shoulders stayed tight. Lila looked at the project and smiled too brightly. "This is amazing," she said. Then she looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something. Not love. Not anger. Something like a quick check. Like she was assessing whether I noticed more than she wanted. I didn't say anything. Not there. Not in the school gym with glitter on the floor and other families around. We went home. Micah fell asleep on the couch during a movie. Lila carried him to bed. She moved gently, carefully. She was still a good mother. That was never the question. Later, when we were alone, I said, "Everything okay?" Lila sat on the edge of the bed and kicked off her socks. "Yeah," she said, "just a lot." "A lot of what?" She shrugged. "Life." I waited. She didn't add anything. She turned off the lamp. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing. It sounded normal, but I didn't feel normal. I felt like I was lying next to a person who had learned a new language and was practicing it quietly when I wasn't looking. Over the next week, I started noticing small things that didn't belong. A faint scent on her hair that wasn't her shampoo. Not perfume exactly, more like someone else's laundry detergent. A song on our shared playlist that didn't match her taste at all. A new emoji in her texts. A little half-smile face she'd never used before. None of it was proof. But proof isn't always what changes you. Sometimes it's accumulation. A stack of tiny weights, one at a time, until something finally drops. Then came the library book. Micah needed a book for a reading assignment. We stopped by the library after school. The place smelled like paper and quiet. Micah ran ahead to the kids' section. I wandered toward the return shelf where people drop books they're done with. And there it was. A paperback thriller. Same cover as the one I'd seen weeks ago on our kitchen table. I picked it up. Inside the cover, there was a stamp from our local library. So it wasn't some random purchase. It was ours. Or hers. I flipped through the pages, and a small piece of paper slid out. A folded note. Not a receipt. Not a bookmark. A note. I opened it. 2 lines written in neat handwriting. Thursday was the best part of my week. Same place next time? No name. Just that. My throat went dry. I stood there between shelves, holding that note like it was hot. Micah ran up with a book about sharks. Dad, can I get this? I swallowed. Yeah, I said, sure. I checked out the books with a calm face that didn't match my insides. At home, I put Micah's book on the table. Then I carried the thriller into our bedroom. I set it on Lila's side of the nightstand, right where she'd see it. I didn't leave the note inside. I kept the note in my pocket. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed one thing in my control. When Lila came home, I watched her as casually as I could. She dropped her tote bag. She washed her hands. She asked Micah about school. She moved through the kitchen like nothing was wrong. Then she went to the bedroom to change. A minute later, she called out, "Did you borrow my book?" Her voice was light, but there was a tightness at the end. I walked to the doorway and leaned against the frame. "It was at the library," I said. Lila came out holding the book. Her fingers pressed into the cover. "Oh," she said, "I must have returned it." "You left something in it," I said. Her eyes flashed. "What?" I kept my face neutral. "A note," I said. The silence between us thickened. Micah was in the living room, humming to himself, building something out of blocks. Lila lowered her voice. "What did it say?" she asked. The question landed hard. Not, "What note?" Not, "I don't know what you mean." What did it say? I stared at her. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. "It said Thursday was the best part of someone's week," I said, "and they wanted to meet again." Lila's mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked toward the living room, then back at me. "Grant," she started. I held up a hand, not aggressive. Just a pause. "We can talk later," I said quietly. Lila swallowed. She nodded once. Then she turned and went into the bathroom, shutting the door. I heard the faucet turn on. Water running. A long time. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay there and listened to the apartment. Micah's soft breathing in his room. The refrigerator humming. A car passing outside. Lila shifting in bed, careful not to touch me. I stared at the ceiling and tried to decide what I knew. I had a Bluetooth name. A note. A coffee order that didn't fit. A pattern of decompression drives. I had nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make a courtroom scene. But I wasn't trying to win a case. I was trying to understand my own life. The next day was Saturday. Micah had soccer practice in the morning. Lila usually came. She cheered quietly from the sidelines, hands in her pockets, smiling when Micah looked over. This time, she said she had to run errands. She kissed Micah's forehead. "Have fun," she said. Then she left. Micah didn't seem bothered. Kids are resilient when they don't know the full shape of the problem. But I felt it. I watched her walk away with her keys and her phone and a face that looked too composed. At practice, I stood with other parents and pretended I was watching the drills. But my mind kept going back to the note. Thursday. Same place next time. What place? I didn't follow her. I didn't put a tracker on her phone. I didn't do anything like that. Not because I'm morally superior. Because I didn't want to become someone I didn't recognize. Also, I was scared of what I'd find. Fear makes you weird. It makes you cautious. It makes you cling to normal as long as you can. That afternoon, Micah went to a friend's house. The apartment was empty. Lila was out. I walked to the car and turned it on. The Bluetooth connected automatically. Evan's iPhone. There it was again. Like a quiet joke. I tapped to the call history on the car's screen. Numbers. Names. Then one new entry. Evan. Not just the device name. A contact. Saved. I stared at it. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just sat there. Then I did something small and strangely calm. I removed the contact from the car. Deleted. One tap. Gone. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like taking my hands off a hot stove. When Lila came home, she parked and came upstairs carrying a small bag. She said it was groceries, but it was too light. She moved through the kitchen quietly. I watched her hands. Her wedding ring wasn't on. Again. She noticed me looking. She lifted her left hand like it was nothing. My fingers feel swollen lately, she said. It's uncomfortable. I nodded. Okay. She held my gaze for half a second, then looked away. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't ask what she'd bought. I didn't ask who Evan was. Because I wanted one thing first. I wanted to see her tell the truth without being cornered. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. Not naturally. The next week, I lived inside a strange double reality. In one reality, we were a family. We cooked dinner. We reminded Micah to brush his teeth. We watched a show together on the couch. In the other reality, I was watching Lila like she was a door that might not open again. I listened for her laughter. I noted her absences. I watched the way she angled her phone away. I hated myself for watching, but I couldn't stop. On Wednesday, Micah's teacher emailed about a small award ceremony on Friday morning. Micah had won something for helpfulness. He was proud. He tried to act like he didn't care, but he cared. The ceremony was at 8:15 a.m., which was tricky for me. That's when I'd usually be getting off shift. But I told Micah, I'll be there. His face lit up. Lila smiled too. I'll be there too, she said. Friday came. I finished my shift and drove straight to the school without going home. My eyes felt gritty. My body felt heavy. But I wanted to be there. I parked and walked toward the building. I was early. The parking lot was half full. Parents were still arriving. I stood near the entrance, rubbing my hands together for warmth. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lila. Running a few minutes late. Go ahead. I stared at the message. A few minutes late. Okay. I believed that because I wanted to. I walked inside and found a seat near the back of the small auditorium. Micah sat with his class up front. He turned and looked for us. When he saw me, he smiled. Then his eyes searched the door. I gave him a small thumbs up. He nodded, trying to be brave again. The ceremony started. Teachers called names. Kids walked up and accepted certificates. Micah kept glancing toward the door. I did too. Lila didn't come. Not 5 minutes late. Not 10. Not at all. Micah's name was called. He walked up. He accepted his certificate. He looked toward the audience, scanning. His smile held, but it was thinner. I clapped loudly enough for him to hear. He found my eyes and relaxed slightly. After, the kids filed out. Parents moved toward the hallway. I stood up and headed toward the exit, thinking I'd text Lila. Then I saw her car. Not in the lot. At the curb, on the street beside the school. Idling. I walked toward it without thinking. I was still half asleep from work. My body moved before my brain caught up. As I got closer, I saw two silhouettes through the windshield. Lila in the driver's seat. A man in the passenger seat. They weren't facing forward. They were angled toward each other, close enough that the space between them looked shared. Not crowded. Shared. The man said something. Lila laughed softly. Then she reached out and touched his arm. Not a big gesture. Just fingers on fabric. A familiar touch. Like she'd done it before. My feet stopped. I stood on the sidewalk with my hands in my jacket pockets. My heart didn't race. It slowed, like something inside me accepted the truth and decided to conserve energy. The man turned slightly. I could see his profile. Short hair. Stubble. Not handsome in a movie way. Just normal. Which made it worse. Because it meant this wasn't fantasy. This was life. Lila leaned in closer, her forehead almost touching his. Not a kiss. But the space right before one. The space that belongs to people who are comfortable. Then she pulled back and looked out through the windshield. And her eyes met mine. Through glass. To distance. Through a life we'd built. Her face changed instantly. The brightness vanished. Her mouth opened slightly. Her hand jerked away from the man's arm like it had been burned. The man followed her gaze and saw me. His posture stiffened. He looked away, suddenly interested in the dashboard. Lila didn't wave. She didn't get out. She didn't do anything dramatic. She just stared at me, frozen. I stared back. Then I did the only thing my body knew how to do. I turned away. I walked back toward the school. I didn't run. I didn't stomp. I walked like a man carrying something fragile inside his chest. Mike came out a minute later. He was holding his certificate carefully so it wouldn't bend. He looked up at me. "Did Mom come?" he asked. I swallowed. "No," I said. "She got held up." He frowned. Then he forced a smile. "It's okay," he said quickly. It wasn't okay. But he didn't have words for what it was. I crouched and adjusted his backpack strap. "I'm proud of you," I said. He brightened a little. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "You earned it." Micah hugged me. That hug was warm and quick. Then he ran ahead toward the car, still a kid. I walked behind him with slow steps. By the time we reached our car, Lila's sedan was gone. Gone like it had never been there. Micah climbed in. He started talking about a classmate who tripped on the stage. I nodded, making small sounds of interest. But my head was full of that moment through the windshield. Not the touch. Not the closeness. The look in Lila's eyes when she saw me. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, like she'd known this moment was coming. And she'd been living past it anyway. At home, Micah put his certificate on the fridge. He stood back and admired it. Then he asked for pancakes. I made pancakes. Because that's what dads do when their world is splitting quietly in half. Lila came home around noon. She walked in slowly, like the air might slap her. Micah ran to her. "Mom, I got my certificate." Lila's face softened. She hugged him. "Oh, baby," she said, "I'm so proud of you." Her voice sounded real. Her eyes were wet. Micah didn't notice. He was too busy explaining the award. Lila listened, nodding. Then Micah went to his room to build something with his blocks. Lila and I stood in the kitchen. The apartment was bright with midday sun, the kind of light that usually makes you feel calm. That day, it made everything too visible. Lila didn't speak first. Neither did I. We stood there like two people waiting for a train that had already passed. Finally, I said, "I saw you." Lila's shoulders dropped. A small collapse. She didn't ask where. She didn't pretend. She just exhaled. "I know," she said quietly. Her voice was flat, not cold, just depleted. I nodded once. "Who is he?" I asked. Lila leaned back against the counter. She rubbed her forehead like she had a headache. "His name is Evan," she said. The name landed with a dull thud. Of course it was Evan. Of course my car had been telling me the truth. "How long?" I asked. Lila's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward Micah's room, then back at me. "A few months," she said. I stared at her. My chest felt hollow again, not like a dramatic emptiness, like a quiet room after someone leaves. "A few months," I repeated. Lila nodded. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't collapse to the floor. She just looked tired, and that made me tired too. "What is it?" I asked. "Is it physical?" I kept my voice even. I didn't want Micah hearing words that would stick to him. Lila swallowed. "It started as talking," she said. "Just talking." I didn't respond. She continued as if she needed to say it out loud to make it real. "He comes by the clinic sometimes. His mom is in rehab. We started talking in the waiting room. Then, coffee." I stared at the vanilla latte in my mind. I nodded slowly. "That's why," I said. Lila's mouth tightened. "I know how it sounds," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It sounds like you were late to our kid's ceremony because you were sitting in your car with him." Lila flinched. Her eyes filled. She blinked hard. "I messed up," she whispered. That sentence didn't fix anything. It just sat there between us like a small stone. I waited. She didn't immediately give me a speech. No dramatic explanation. Just silence. Then she said, "I didn't set out to do this." I looked at her. She looked back, and for a moment I saw the woman I married. Not a cartoon villain. Not a monster. Just someone who had been making small decisions that added up to a cliff. I asked, "Why?" Lila's laugh was short and bitter. "Because I felt invisible," she said. I didn't react. I let her speak. "Not because you're cruel," she added quickly, like she didn't want to paint me as the bad guy. "You're not. You're just gone. Nights, sleeping days, and when you're awake, you're exhausted." I nodded. That was true. And hearing it out loud still hurt. "I didn't want to complain," she said. "You work hard. You do everything you can." But I felt like I was living next to a tired man who loved me in theory. I inhaled slowly. That line hit me like a quiet punch. "In theory," I repeated. Lila's eyes dropped. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's not fair." I stared at the countertop. My hands were calm. My voice was calm. But something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Just a structural break. Like a beam giving way. I said, "Did you tell him you're married?" Lila looked up, offended for a split second. "Of course," she said. "He knows." "Does he care?" I asked. Lila didn't answer. That was its own answer. I asked, "Did you take your ring off for him?" Lila's face tightened. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It felt easier." Easier. A word people use when they don't want to say what it costs. Micah's door opened down the hall. We both snapped our faces into normal expressions. Micah walked in, holding a half-built Lego spaceship. "Dad, can you help me with this?" he asked. I forced a small smile. "Yeah," I said. "Give me a second." Micah looked at Lila. "Mom?" Lila smiled too quickly. "Go set it on the table, honey," she said. "Dad will help." Micah nodded and disappeared. When the hallway was quiet again, Lila whispered, "We shouldn't talk about this with him here." "We shouldn't have created something we can't talk about with him here," I said softly. Lila's eyes closed briefly. She nodded. "I know," she whispered. I looked at her. My voice stayed controlled. "Do you want to stop?" I asked. Lila opened her eyes. She stared at me like she wanted the question to be different. Like she wanted me to ask something simpler. Something she could answer cleanly. But I wasn't offering clean. I was offering truth. Lila's lips parted. Then she hesitated. That hesitation was the moment. Not the note. Not the latte. Not the car. That pause. Because it told me she wasn't choosing me. Not fully. Not anymore. Lila finally said, "I don't know." I nodded. I believed her. And I also understood what "I don't know" meant. It meant she wanted the comfort of both worlds. The stability of our family. And the escape of him. And I wasn't going to be a man who lived inside somebody else's indecision. I walked down the hall and sat with Micah at the table. He slid the Lego pieces toward me. I helped him line up the tiny parts. He chattered about how the spaceship needed more boosters. I nodded and made the boosters. My hands worked. My mind floated above my body like it was watching from the ceiling. After Micah went back to his room, I went to our bedroom. I pulled out a duffel bag. I started packing. Not violently. Not like a scene. I folded shirts. I grabbed work pants. I put socks in the side pocket. Lila stood in the doorway. "Grant," she said quietly. I didn't look up. "I'm not doing this to punish you," I said. Lila's voice broke slightly. "Then why?" I paused. I held a shirt in my hands. "Because if I stay," I said, "I will become someone I don't like." Lila stepped closer. "Please," she whispered, "can we fix this?" I looked at her. My eyes were dry. My throat felt tight. "What does fix mean?" I asked. Lila swallowed. "I stop," she said quickly. "I stop talking to him. I focus on us." I watched her face. I watched her eyes. I waited for certainty. I didn't see it. I saw fear. Fear of losing what she had built with him. Fear of losing what she had with me. Fear of consequences. Not commitment. And maybe she didn't know the difference. But I did. I said, "You didn't come to Micah's ceremony." Lila winced. "I know," she whispered. "You were right there," I said, "outside the school." Lila's eyes filled again. She nodded. "I know," she said again. That repetition didn't help. It just underlined the fact. I zipped the duffel bag. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Lila's shoulders shook slightly. She covered her mouth with her hand. I felt something twist inside me. Not pity. Not triumph. Just grief. Grief for a life that had been ordinary in the best way. Micah appeared in the hallway. Barefoot. Eyes wide. He saw the bag. He looked at my face. Then at Lila's. "What's happening?" he asked. Lila's mouth opened, but no words came out. I crouched in front of Micah. I kept my voice low and steady. "I'm going to stay somewhere else for a little while," I said. Micah's brow furrowed. "Why?" he asked. "Because kids always ask the question adults don't want to answer." I inhaled carefully. Because Mom and I have adult stuff to figure out, I said. But you're okay. You're safe. You didn't do anything wrong. Micah looked like he wanted to cry, but he didn't. He stared at the floor. Then he whispered, "Are you mad at Mom?" I held his shoulders gently. "I'm sad," I said. "That's different." He nodded slowly, like he was storing that sentence somewhere. "Can I still come with you sometimes?" he asked. "Always," I said. He leaned forward and hugged me. Harder than usual. His arms around my neck felt like something anchoring me to reality. I hugged him back. Then I stood up. I looked at Lila. Her face was wet now, but she still looked like herself. Not evil. Not insane. Just human. That's what made it complicated. At the door, Lila whispered, "Where will you go?" "My brother's," I said. I didn't add, "for now," because I didn't know what "for now" meant yet. Outside, the air was cold again. I put the bag in the trunk. I sat in the driver's seat. I didn't start the car right away. I stared at the steering wheel. My hands were steady. My mind wasn't. I drove to my brother's place in silence. No music. No radio host talking too brightly. Just the sound of tires on pavement. My brother, Pete, opened the door in sweatpants. He looked at my bag. He looked at my face. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He just stepped aside. "Couch is yours," he said. That night, I slept like a rock. Not because I felt good, because exhaustion finally won. In the days that followed, life became a set of new routines. I picked Micah up from school on my days off. I took him to soccer. I helped with homework at Pete's kitchen table. Micah adjusted faster than I did. Kids are built for adaptation. Adults are built for denial. Lila and I texted about schedules. Mostly practical. Practice at 5. Dentist on Tuesday. Can you send his cleats? We avoided the deeper conversation until we couldn't. A week after I left, Lila asked if we could talk. Not in the apartment. Not with Micah around. We met at a small diner near the highway. Neutral territory. The kind of place where nobody lingers. We sat in a booth. Fluorescent. Lila looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and finally set it down, only to realize she didn't know what to do with her hands. "I ended it," she said. I didn't react. I just listened. "I told Evan I couldn't keep doing it," she added. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. Lila flinched slightly, like she'd expected a bigger response. "Aren't you going to ask anything?" she asked. I stared at the coffee cup. Then I looked up. "I don't think the details will help me," I said. Lila's eyes filled again. "I hate what I did," she whispered. I believed she hated it. But hatred isn't the same as undoing. She leaned forward. "Grant, I want to come home," she said. "I want us to fix this." I watched her closely. I wasn't looking for tears. I wasn't looking for dramatic promises. I was looking for something simple. Ownership. Clarity. She took a breath. "I was lonely," she said, "and I got addicted to being seen." That was the most honest thing she'd said so far. I nodded slowly. "I get that," I said. Lila blinked. "You do?" "I understand it," I corrected. "I don't approve of it, but I understand it." She pressed her fingers together. "I didn't think it would go that far," she said. I didn't argue. People always say that. Like distance matters when the direction is the same. I said, "You didn't come to Micah's ceremony." Lila's eyes closed. "I know," she whispered. "That wasn't about me," I said. "That was about him." Lila's shoulders shook. "I know," she said again. I took a slow breath. Here's the truth I didn't want to admit. That ceremony was the moment I stopped picturing a clean repair. Because even if we rebuilt us, I couldn't forget that Micah looked for her and didn't find her. And I couldn't forget why. Lila reached across the table. Her fingers hovered near mine. She didn't touch. She waited like she knew touch might be too much. "I'll do anything," she said. I looked at her. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. She nodded quickly, relieved. "I don't want you to suffer," I continued. Her relief faded. "I want you to be well," I said, "for Micah, for you." Lila stared at me, confused. I said, "But I don't know if I can be married to you anymore." The words were calm. They didn't shake, but they landed heavy. Lila's face crimpled. She covered her mouth again, trying to keep quiet. People at nearby tables pretended not to listen. That's what strangers do. They give you privacy by looking away. Lila whispered, "So that's it?" I shook my head. "It's not it," I said. "It's just where I am." She wiped her cheeks. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we focus on Micah," I said. "We keep things stable. We don't drag him through our mess." Lila nodded quickly. "Yes," she said, "of course." "And it means," I added, "we don't rush into pretending." She stared at me. I could see anger flash behind her tears. Not at me. At the situation. At consequences. At herself. "So you're just leaving," she said. I held her gaze. "I already left," I said softly. "I'm just telling you why I'm not coming back yet." Lila's jaw tightened. "You're punishing me," she said. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm protecting what's left of me." Silence stretched. Then she whispered, "Do you still love me?" That question was unfair in its simplicity, because love doesn't vanish like a light switch. Love can still exist even when trust is gone. I looked at her and answered carefully. "I care about you," I said, "but I don't feel safe with you." Her eyes squeezed shut. That sentence hurt her. It hurt me too. But it was true. After that, we moved into a new kind of relationship. Co-parenting. Coordination. Polite distance. Lila didn't become a villain. She didn't spiral into cartoon behavior. She showed up for Micah. She took him to appointments. She packed his lunches. She sent me pictures when he lost his first tooth. Life kept going. It always does. Sometimes that's the cruelest part. A month later, I found a small apartment closer to Micah's school. A one-bedroom with a couch that pulled out. Not much, but it was mine. The first night I stayed there, I sat on the floor because I hadn't bought a kitchen table yet. I ate a sandwich over a cardboard box. The room felt empty, but the emptiness was honest. No pretending. No wondering who was texting in the other room. No waiting for a decompression drive to end. Just quiet. I started noticing how my body reacted to quiet. At first, I hated it. Silence made room for thoughts. Then, slowly, I realized silence can also be relief. Because silence doesn't lie. One evening, Micah was at my place. He was coloring at the coffee table while I heated up spaghetti. He looked up suddenly. "Dad," he said. "Yeah?" I asked. He hesitated. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" he asked. There it was. The word kids learned from other kids. From TV. From the way adults pause in the middle of sentences. I turned off the stove and sat on the couch. Micah watched me, trying to read my face. I kept my voice steady. "I don't know yet," I said, "but we're going to be okay." Micah frowned. "That doesn't answer it," he said. He wasn't wrong. I gave him a small, tired smile. "You're right," I said, "it doesn't." He waited. I took a breath. "Sometimes adults make choices that change things," I said. And sometimes it takes time to figure out what the new shape of life is. Micah stared at his coloring page. He said quietly, "Did Mom choose something bad?" I swallowed. This is where you can ruin your kid with one sentence. So I kept it simple. "Mom made a mistake," I said, "and Dad got hurt." Micah's eyes filled. He blinked fast, trying not to cry. "Is it my fault?" he asked. My chest tightened. "No," I said immediately. "No, never." Micah's shoulders relaxed slightly. He stared at the floor. Then he whispered, "I miss when we were all together." I nodded. "Me too," I said. He leaned against me, and I put my arm around him, and I felt something fierce rise in me. Not anger. Responsibility. The kind that says, "I will not let this break him." Later, after Micah fell asleep on the pull-out couch, I sat at the window and watched cars pass. Headlights sliding across the street like slow fish in dark water. I thought about Lila. I thought about Evan. I thought about the ordinary life we had and how it cracked without ever making a loud sound. I didn't fantasize about revenge. I didn't imagine dramatic confrontations. I didn't want to win. I wanted peace. And peace, I learned, isn't a prize you grab. It's something you choose, even when it hurts. Lila and I eventually had a longer conversation. Not in a diner. Not in passing texts. A real talk. We sat in the apartment we used to share after Micah went to a sleepover. The place looked the same, but it felt like someone else's house. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten pancakes, where we'd done homework, where we'd paid bills. Lila's hands were folded. Her ring was on. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. She didn't say anything about it. I didn't either. She spoke first. "I want to tell you the truth," she said. I nodded. "Okay?" Lila took a breath. "The first time it felt wrong," she said, "and I still did it." She paused, eyes glossy. "I'm not saying that to hurt you," she added. "I'm saying it because I kept pretending it was an accident. It wasn't. I listened. That honesty mattered, even if it came late." She continued, "He made me feel light, like I wasn't always responsible for everything." I stared at the tabletop. I understood the craving. I didn't forgive the choice. Lila said, "When you work nights, you disappear into this tiredness. You come home and you're physically here, but you're far away." I nodded slowly. "That's true," I said. Lila's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected me to agree. "I should have told you," she said. "I should have demanded we change something. Therapy, different shifts, something." "Yes," I said. She flinched again. "I didn't," she whispered. "I took the coward way. I took the easy attention." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked, "Did you love him?" Lila swallowed. Her gaze dropped. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I love the feeling." That answer was honest, too. It didn't make it better. But it was real. I asked, "Why our car?" Lila blinked. "What?" "The Bluetooth," I said. "Why was his phone paired to our car?" Lila's face tightened with shame. "He drove me once," she admitted, "when my car wouldn't start. He helped." I nodded. A practical detail. That's how things slip. One help becomes a habit. A habit becomes intimacy. Intimacy becomes a second life. I said, "You were going to keep going." Lila's eyes closed. She didn't argue. She whispered, "Yes." That yes was a clean knife. It cut through the last of my denial. I sat back in my chair. My body felt strangely calm, like it had finally stopped fighting the truth. Lila looked at me with desperation. "Grant, I can change," she said. I didn't doubt she could. People can change, but change doesn't erase memory. And trust isn't rebuilt by effort alone. It's rebuilt by time and consistency and a feeling of safety that can't be negotiated. I said, maybe you can. I hope you do. Lila stared. But, she whispered. But I can't promise I'll be your husband again, I said. Tears slid down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them this time. She let them fall. It wasn't a performance. It was grief. For what she broke. For what she lost. For what she couldn't undo. I stood up. I didn't hate her. I didn't want her to suffer. I just didn't want to live inside a marriage that had a hidden room. At the door, I paused. Lila's voice was small. Do you ever think, she asked, that if you had been around more? I turned back. My voice stayed quiet. We can play that game forever, I said, but you made choices with your feet on the ground, so did I. Mine were work, yours were him. Lila nodded slowly. She didn't argue. That was the closest thing to closure we had. Months passed. Micah adjusted to 2 homes. He packed a backpack like a seasoned traveler. He learned which charger belonged where. He learned the rhythm of my new place and Lila's place. Kids learn rhythms quickly. I learned slower. I learned how to sit alone without reaching for distraction. I learned how to cook for one without making too much. I learned how to fold laundry without expecting someone else's clothes in the basket. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up and reach toward the other side of the bed. Empty. The emptiness didn't shock me anymore. It just reminded me. I started going to the gym in the mornings, not to transform myself, but to burn off the restless energy that had nowhere else to go. I started reading again. Real books. Not headlines. Not texts. Books felt like a place where the world made sense in complete sentences. Lila and I stayed civil. Sometimes we even laughed briefly about Micah's jokes. But there was always a line. A line we didn't cross. The old intimacy was gone. And even when she tried to recreate it, bringing me coffee during a custody exchange, touching my arm lightly, I felt my body resist. Not out of cruelty. Out of memory. One day, almost a year after I left, Micah had another school event. Another ceremony. Another small moment that mattered more than adults realize. This time, Lila and I both arrived early. We sat in the same room, a few rows apart. Micah looked at both of us and smiled. Not a strained smile. A real one. Like he could feel the stability we were building for him. After the ceremony, Micah ran to us. He held up his certificate. Did you see? He asked. Yes, I said. Lila nodded. We saw, she said. Micah beamed. He didn't ask why we weren't sitting together. He didn't ask why we didn't take a family photo. He accepted the shape of his life as normal. That acceptance broke my heart a little, and healed it a little too. Later in the parking lot, Lila stood near her car. She looked at me with a cautious expression. I'm glad we're doing okay, she said. I nodded. Me too, I said. She hesitated. Evan moved away, she said quietly. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask when. I didn't ask why. Because it didn't matter. He wasn't the whole story. He was the door she chose to open. I said, okay. Lila studied my face like she was searching for a reaction. For jealousy. For anger. For relief. I gave her none of those. Just calm. She looked down. I'm sorry, she said again. The same sentence. A different day. Same weight. I nodded. I know, I said. Then I added, take care of yourself, Lila. Her eyes filled. She whispered, you too. I got into my car and drove home. On the way, the radio played a song I didn't recognize. A soft voice. A simple melody. I turned it down until it was almost silence. And I realized something. The loudest part of betrayal isn't the moment you find out. It's the quiet that comes after. The quiet where you finally hear your own thoughts again. The quiet where you stop making excuses for someone else. The quiet where you notice you've been holding your breath for months. That night, Micah stayed with me. He brushed his teeth and left toothpaste in the sink like it was art. He asked for extra blankets. He told me a story about a kid at school who tried to trade a sandwich for a pencil. I laughed. Micah laughed too. Then he fell asleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, just the glow from the street outside. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd conquered anything. I felt steady again. Different kind of steady. Not the old steady of routine and assumption. The new steady of reality and choice. I thought back to that first morning, the missing cable, the Bluetooth name, the vanilla latte. Those were tiny things. But tiny things are how lives change. Not with fireworks. With small shifts people think won't be noticed. I noticed. Eventually. Late, but not too late. I didn't get a dramatic ending. No karmic twist. No instant justice. Just a quiet decision to stop living in a story that wasn't mine. Sometimes that's the strongest thing a person can do. Not win. Not punish. Just leave. And keep walking. Even when it's quiet enough to hear your heart breaking. Even when it's quiet enough to hear it start healing too.